The chair recognizes Mrs. Bush from the great state of Missouri.
Yes,
for 5 minutes.
great state of Missouri. All right, St. Louis and I are here today for a timely and important hearing. Mr. Dodaro, it's a pleasure to see you again, and hello to all the GAO staff. Last Congress, we discussed the federal government's obligation to clean up areas where federal activities, including nuclear weapons production, have contaminated the environment. The Department of Energy knew that Coldwater Creek in North St. Louis County was dangerously contaminated in the 1960s, yet it has taken over 60 years to address this crisis. The federal government now faces $626 billion in liabilities for these cleanup responsibilities. For decades, radioactive materials from the first atomic bomb were allowed to seep deadly contamination into Coldwater Creek in my district. Toxic chemicals like radium and uranium continue to threaten the safety and well-being of my constituents and my loved ones in St. Louis. As a result, tens of thousands of people in my community have confirmed or suspected exposure to radioactive waste. That means lung cancer, bone cancer, leukemia, breast cancer, skin cancer, and that's just to name a few of the tragic impacts. Far beyond the monetary cost, I know the human toll that this high-risk area takes because I've lived it and my constituents continue to live it every single day. We're not talking about a distant problem. I am in this room. I lived by the creek for a number of years. Even when I moved a few minutes away, the fully finished basement of my new townhouse would flood with potentially radioactive water. My son's room was in that basement. Our children are not safe living near the graveyard of an atomic bomb factory. Mr. Dodaro, what progress has been made on the Coldwater Creek issues, which remains on the high-risk list since 2021?
Ask Mr. Gaffigan, our expert, to respond, please.
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. And we discussed this 2 years ago.
We did.
We did. And at your request, we've been looking at this issue. Coldwater Creek is one of 20 FUSRAP sites, which were the commercial side of the Manhattan Project that have left a legacy of waste, not only in your state, but 7 other states. So we are currently undergoing a review of the Corps. The Army Corps is charged with the cleanup of these 20 sites, and we're looking at Coldwater Creek and all the sites and all these communities and assessing where they are and assessing the environmental liabilities, where the risks are. Are they following leading practices for doing the cleanup? And what is the engagement with the community, the communication and sharing with the folks of what's going on? So we're looking at all those issues, and we visited Coldwater Creek in November of 2022, talked to the residents there and the cleanup officials, and we expect to report to you in August of 23 on the status of that project as well as the others.
Thank you. Thank you for all of that info. All right. And we know, as we know, some progress has been made. Much more still needs to be done just across the board. Last October, high levels of radioactive exposure were detected in samples taken from the library, from the kitchen, classrooms, fields, and playground of Jana Elementary School in my district. The school has since been permanently shut down. Mr. Dodaro, or what more can the federal government do to tackle this serious issue? Or it can go to, yeah.
Yeah, sure. And that's one of the things we're looking at. I know there's been several studies done just to that elementary school and what's going on. And I think that'll be encompassed in our report as well because of contamination from that site.
Okay, thank you. Yesterday, I introduced the bipartisan, bicameral Justice for Jana Elementary Act to ensure that potentially radiation-exposed schools in my district are lifted up and not left behind. It will require the federal government to clean up Jana Elementary and test other properties in the school district for contamination. You know, when we think about this issue, while Republicans are working to cut funding that will undermine the federal government's ability to meet its obligations to clean contaminated areas and assist suffering communities like ours, Democrats, we are working to make sure the federal government does more and invests more robust funding to support our communities. Congress and the federal government must meet their hazardous waste cleanup obligations to our communities. Yet Republicans and their Default on America Act would deprive the government of resources to tackle these hazards and put the health and education of yet another generation of children at risk. I want to thank Mr. Dodaro and the GAO for being here today and answering our questions. Thank you. I yield back.